So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm Anna Laura Syracuse, and I'm one of the coordinators of the Women for Economy Village. To me, the hard role of kicking off today's session. Before deep diving into my colleagues' part, we decided to start from a small step back and a very brief introduction of what is our village scope and vision, what we as members of Women for Economy committed to with our statement exactly 1 year ago, and why we believe our topic should be everyone's priority nowadays. Starting from the very beginning, our village is made up of 74 people, not just women, by the way, luckily, coming from 26 countries, with Argentina, Uganda, Brazil, and Italy being the most represented ones across our nationalities. This creates a lot of value in having a full representation of female capital and priorities across continents and not just countries. Why do we believe in the importance of female capital for the society, though? Women, like no other, have special talents, but over the years have not always been considered as key members of the economic system. Even though they, of course, have a systemic view and can grasp the interconnections across society and nature with a constant eye on people's well-being and system sustainability. Our vision is to go beyond equal opportunities. We don't think that women and men are the same. In fact, we want to leverage on their differences and make them intertwine to ensure full representation in today's and tomorrow's society. Care and unpaid work should be recognized for us as a central economic asset. Reduction of inequalities and gender gap should be crucial for everyone. Our final objective is to not only guarantee equal pay, but also equal access to health services, education, legal protections, and policies to conciliate family and working life. Indeed, our commitment and contribution to the EoF final statement is the one you can read below. So we commit ourselves to help women to thrive and generate a transformative change towards a human, sustainable, equitable, and inclusive economy. Because no one is left behind if no woman is left behind. During the global event, which was held almost a month ago, we largely talked about the narrative and spiritual capital. We all agreed, especially after that event, on the importance of storytelling and representation. So which is our village statement and what do we fight for in terms of being represented, properly represented in society? We met in person last year, like any other village. We mapped our cross-continent needs and set a number of priorities, which you can find in the upper part of the slide, that we firmly believe were important, not only for us to commit on, of course, but for the entire society. In fact, we wanted to appeal institutions, companies, and organizations to actually work towards to generate a more inclusive and fair society. So first thing first, you can see in the first pillar, we actually committed ourselves to generate cultural change in norms, attitudes, and expectations towards working and studying women, motherhood, and parenting or care in general. We want to promote flexibility within companies and organizations to ensure balance between work and family, depending on each person's life step, with the final objective of embracing the balance of families and not have everything depending on women, as it actually is at the moment in most of the economies. The second pillar of our statement is actually education of both boys and girls, which both indeed needs to be prioritized, like for both, to drive change for the future generations. So in this case, our priority is to promote cooperation and solidarity instead of competitiveness, perseverance and resilience over perfection, because failures are unavoidable experiences in life, and actually they need to be seen as they are. So opportunities to learn and grow rather than just stops in everyone's route to perfection, as the current society is actually telling us every day. The third priority in our commitment is fighting structural inequalities, which usually start from girlhood, but affect women's life forever, with the objective to provide women with not only education, but also proper tools to be independent, preventing situations of vulnerability and proper contributing to the economy. We want to address issues like women's education and health, the need to spread STEM subjects and financial capabilities, while at the same time addressing specific problems of women living in rural areas, for instance, such as mobility, or migrant women who daily fight with barriers like language or access to institutions. The fourth pillar of our statement is to promote a cultural respect cross-gender. Once again, everything we're talking about does not just interest women, it interests everyone. So we just want to commit not for better communication between male and women, but also for women to have equal opportunities to speak up, especially when discriminated, and not just for gender or racial issues, but overall in their daily life. Lastly, with our actions, we intend to enhance dialogue and understanding cross religions as a tool of peace and developing, especially nowadays, keeping our hearts open to diversity. In today's session, we'll actually focus on the main pillars with Lucia, Olena, and Valentina, and we will close up with Diletta, who will be sharing her experience as a female entrepreneur, and of course will be moderating the final part of the hour with any questions which might rise. Still, before handing over to Lucia, I wanted to point out one thing. Why is this topic so important? In such a world scenario, Claudia Goldin just won the first female-only Nobel Prize for Economy in history, proving with her long life researches the importance of the topics we're focusing on, and the importance not just for the US, but for the entire world. First of all, who is she, for those who haven't heard about her? She's an Harvard University professor with more than 30 years of academic history. She's known for the research into the role of women, and in fact, she had an extensive research on gender disparities in the labor market, spanning over 200 years of US history. Over the years, she has pointed out the reasons for the well-documented gender pay gap and the overall female participation in the labor market. In this slide, you can see in the first graph on the left that labor contribution, like women contribution to the labor market, is actually represented and not shown as has not shown a consistent upward trend over time, but has actually declined with the shift from agrarian to industrial society in the 19th century, when the concept of men started being actually the unique person earning for the family benefit. The pattern has luckily changed over time, but despite modernization, economic growth and increased female employment, the earning gap between men and women still stays unchanged. She proved this is actually shaped and a lot influenced by the let's say, the experience of the previous generations, such as our mothers or grandmothers, who usually delayed their return to work until they were older, but also above all, especially now, from her researches, it emerged that the gender gap is strongly increasing after the birth of our first child, which means that parenthood is significantly influencing pay gap in contemporary times. So about this and the concept of women's sustainable occupability, we will now deep dive with Lucia Marchegiani, professor of Roma Tre University, and another Women for Economy coordinator, which I'm now leaving the floor to. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anna Laura, for giving me the floor, and thanks everyone for being here with us today, and thanks to my colleague in the village. I am honored to be part of this village, and I hope I can add up to some of your pre-existing knowledge about women and their role in, let's say, in the labor force, and why companies should focus more and should worry more about their sustainable occupability or employability in the long run, and why this is, as Anna Laura was saying, not a problem for women and only for women, but it's an issue for everyone and the whole economy. So let me start by clarifying why we talk about employability and or occupability. It's not a matter of having more women working or more women, engaged in the workforce, but it's really a matter of their conditions and their perspective in the economy. As Anna Laura was saying, the fact that Claudia Goldin was awarded the Nobel Prize was really very important for each of us who is studying this subject. And apparently women were better off in the old days when they were, let's say, more present in the workforce. But as Anna Laura pointed out, it's not a matter of quantity, but it's a matter of quality. So, and we still struggle against the old issues such as the gender pay gap. And that's a problem, as I said, not only for women, but for the workforce and the work, let's say, productivity as a whole. So let me introduce you the concept of sustainable employability or occupability. As I said, it's not a problem of having women just working, but it's an issue of sustainable working, sustainable employability. Now, this concept has been conceptualized and studied from different perspectives. So we have labor economics interested in this concept, as well as human resources managers from a practitioner's point of view, but also from a research point of view. So what I want to say is that sustainable employability has become like an umbrella concept that needs to be studied from different perspectives in an integrated approach. We need an interdisciplinary approach, not only economics, but also other disciplines, because the concept itself is multidimensional. We need multidimensional concepts because the problem is complex. So it's not only having women work more, but it's really a complex issue. If we want to address all the problems, all the issues that still remain on the table. So by multidimensional, we mean that if we look at sustainable employability, we need to look at once at different micro issues, micro problems, sub problems, such as the problem of, let's say, health in the workplace, which is not only objective, but actually it's a subjective health. So the research has shown that if we really want to address the problem of workforce well-being, we should not focus on objective indicators and concepts of health and well-being, but we really need to customize the intervention so that subjective health is really taken into account. And for example, this is very clear when we look at the fatigue. It's not that everyone experiences fatigue at the same way. So let's say customized interventions should be studied and should be put in practice. A whole stream of research has been devoted to the problem of competencies and skills and how to address skill gaps so that the workability is maintained over the long run. And when we look at the performance, also, this is a very important concept in the sustainable employability umbrella concept. And it's, let's say, put into to the table other issues which has to do with how we measure performance, how we define performance in the first stance. And not to conclude with, but just to add up, motivation and job satisfaction are also other issues that have been studied a lot within the sustainable employability field of research. And when we put motivation and job satisfaction under the spotlight, it's obvious that economic models should not take let's say, the workforce or the female workforce as a whole, but we really need to dig into the differences from person to person, from one worker to another. And some studies have already set up the, let's say, the path towards a more thorough understanding of these concepts. It's not only multidimensional, and it requires different research efforts from different disciplines, but it's also multi-level. We can look at the sustainable employability from a very personal and individual perspective, but also from the perspective of a company or of a workplace, but also if we want to enlarge the picture from the perspective of the whole business or society. That's why it is not a problem only for one woman working in any context, but this is an issue that affects really everyone well-being and everyone, let's say, bettering off of the working condition. What is really important in this concept is the time, and having clear in mind that we don't want to focus on instantaneous pictures, but this is a process we want to look into, and this is a process that we really want to ignite if we want to really have a cultural change and an effective change in the workplaces, like Anna was saying before. And it must be said that this longitudinal perspective has somehow been neglected. That's why Claudia Goldin winning the Nobel Prize is also very interesting, because as an historian, she was looking back for quite some years, and she was taking into account quite some extensive, let's say, time frame, which is very important to understand the trend in the society and in the management field, and also to set up new trends and new, let's say, change of direction. When we look more closely into this concept of sustainable employability, this is a second order term. It's composed by employability, sustainability, and time, as I was saying. When we look at the employability, again, there are many studies that focus on the employability skills. So how are women, and how are women different in setting up their skills to be employable and to reinforce their employability, but also from the other perspective, how are companies, and if companies are now taking this into account and helping women to build up their own employability in the long term, in the medium term, but also in the longer term. So that means that if we assume the longer term perspective, also maternity leave, let's say, has a different understanding and meaning, because the problem is not the absence, the leave for, let's say, a number of months. Okay, this is different from country to country, from economic system to economic system. Let's take into account Italy. Let's say the standard is 5 months, but there are countries where maternity leave is longer, countries where it's even shorter. But the problem is not that the woman is absent from work for a number of months or a certain period of time. If we assume the longer term perspective, we want to understand how this experience helps that woman helping building up her own employability. So from a different perspective, that means that that experience can be taken into account as a way to reinforce her skill, to be employable, more employable in the medium and in the longer term. And some studies have focused on some specific skills, like the ability to keep up with the technology, the ability to strengthen the communication skill, or teamwork, or the ability to bettering their problem-solving skills, or initiative and enterprise, planning and organization, self-management, but above all, learning. So we don't want to say that during the maternity leaves, a woman should work, otherwise it's not a leave at all, but the company or the economic system or the society as a whole can help women also in their maternity leaves or in the maternity experience to take this experience as a way to reinforce her own employability skills. When we look at the sustainability, if adding up to that, it has been proven that the attitude, that the female attitude towards sustainability makes it a very female word or concept. So when we pair up employability and sustainability over the longer term perspective, it becomes, let's say, quite obvious that we have a say and we have a stance that can help also male workers to understand better their own ability to be employable in the medium and in the longer term. So taken this also from at a higher level and reconnecting these thoughts with the Sustainable Development Goals framework, it is, I mean, we are not saying something very different from what the SDG framework is actually stating. If we look at this is taken from the International Labour Organization. If we look at this, I have taken these, let's say, pillars. Just an example, if we pair the skills and employability with gender equality and not discrimination, it's actually quite present already in the statement at higher level that sustainable development necessarily involves decent work and sustainable employability for women if we want to reach this gender equality and non-discrimination, but also for everyone from another perspective. I just wanted to give you, let's say, an example on how management and, well, actually not only management, because this is a study taken from an interdisciplinary research that has involved University Milano Bicocca and the Maastricht University, and I'm now working with some of these authors on the concept of sustainable employability. So this is an example of one of the instruments that have been developed to really give the companies and organizations the ability to make a difference in the employability of the workforce in the longer term, and from a sustainable perspective. So this is one of the framework they made IT instrument, and I don't want to go too much into the details, but of course I'm open to questions if you are more curious. The four, let's say, core components are health, which involves well-being, vitality, lifestyle. Second, productivity, but productivity that has to be assessed and verified and also sustained, having the sustainability, let's say, framework in mind. More importantly, valuable work is one of the pillars that is more, let's say, impact more in the sustainable employability for women, and the longer term perspective for all work ages. So we don't have to stress out that the workforce has become more mature, we are staying longer in the work environment, and fewer kids have been born. So there is a problem of, let's say, sustainability also in terms of gender, in terms of generation gaps, but that's another story. So what I want to give now is just a glimpse on how sustainable employability for women needs to be tackled for having this female approach towards sustainability and participation in mind. So that means taking, for example, lifelong learning approach, very much, let's say, targeted to women and to female skills, but also skilling up, and foremost, having this longer term perspective, which means that it's true, the care is mostly on the burden of women, but that doesn't mean that care does not teach women something and does not help women to develop those skills, which make them more sustainably employable in the longer term. And that was my contribution to this talk, and I leave the floor to Olena, but of course I'm open to questions that can arise later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you for this amazing contribution, and which is very dear to the whole vision of Women for Economy Village, and as anticipated, Anna Laura. And I would like to remind that Economy of Francesco is very close to also the understanding of Economy of Francesco and St. Clair. So this female aspect has always been there. And when we met in Assisi and the Basilica of St. Clair, we could really feel how important this female contribution is to us and how dear it is to us and how much we need it for the kind of new generative economy, which is person-centered, which we're trying to build with all our efforts. So the contribution I would like to share is how female genius and also talents are expressed in Catholic social teaching, which is very close to the whole vision of Economy of Francesco. It is obviously open to non-Catholic and non-believers because it's profoundly human. But we would like to cover say, inspirational moments, which can be points of reference to take up some reflections and to then put them into practice and also to research, which can really change societies for the better. So when Lucia was talking about this employability and this kind of sustainable aspect, I would like to refer to this female genius, and how it is present in social doctrine of the church. So let me share my screen. Here we go. So the first document that occurs to our mind when we're talking about social doctrine of the church is Compendium of Social Doctrine of the Church. And when we open chapter 3, which is dedicated to the human person, and just a second, no. and the equal dignity of all people. That kind of vision is very dear to Women for Economy Village and to our, let's say, shared vision, because like here it all starts. And here it all identifies that male and female differentiate two individuals of equal dignity. So we can see that the roots of equal rights and equal dignity, they are clearly present in the Catholic social teaching. And it doesn't, however, reflect the static equality because of specificity of female being different from male, and this difference is enriching and is dispensable for harmony in life of society. Women are complement of men, and man is complement of woman. And this is what generates this uniduality. So this is what is important to see about this crucial feminine aspect that brings its contribution and makes it complete, makes this understanding of relationship full. So here in the same document, in the same part of the document, we can see that woman is a helper for the man, just as the man is a helper for the woman. So this is a starting point that is important to clear for our further developments about importance of recognition of female genius. So here we come to the right to work. And this is more clear reference to economic life, so to Economy of Francesco. So we need it in all expressions in the life of society. So because the presence of women in the workplace might be also guaranteed in all the ways. And the first important step is access to professional formation. So this part of Compendium is reference to several key documents we're going to talk about in more detailed way. So Laborem Extens, and the other one is Letter to Women by John Paul II. So it is important to underline that it is important to fully recognize the rights of women in a working place and under all the aspects. It's about pay, insurance, and social security. So when we're talking about feminine genius, so within different documents, which were developed on different historical stages. So we can, let's say, clarify these four characteristics. So these qualities, they mark the feminine genius, but they're not complete in it. So there are many more that we can delineate, so that we can take out of that vision. But these are that are very particular to women. Some of them can be also characteristic to men, but not to that extension, as they are normal and natural to women. So first of all, receptivity. So it lies in the heart of feminine genius. And rather than being passive and state, the receptivity of womanhood is actual active receiving of gifts of life and love, and also appreciation that. So women are more open to accept their also vulnerability and to receive help when necessary and to receive solidarity when necessary. So we are all vulnerable, no matter if men and women. It's just a question of time when it catches up with us. But at the same time, some of us aren't always vulnerable. So, and in different stages of our life, it is important to both express gifts of life to others and love, and also to accept them when we need it. So this receptivity is very particular to women. So, and this openness. So sensitivity is also characteristic to women. It's so integral to feminine personality. and to see and understand the deeper needs of loneliness and human heart, and to respond in love. Generosity is the quality that is like generated from the previous two, and those raise the spirit of generosity, and it places the value on human person in a unique way. And the last but not the least is maternity. It's one of the greatest joys and mysteries of the feminine genius and the capacity for motherhood, both physical but mostly spiritual. So, Laborem Exercens in 1981 is an encyclical letter on human work, in which we have special attention to the work of women. And here we can see very clearly recognition of importance of adapting labor process and organizing it in such a way to respect the person and his or her forms of life. And female work is present in nearly every sector of life. We can have it here clearly stated. And it's important that true advancement of women requires that labor should be structured in such a way that women do not have to pay for their advancement by abandoning what is specific to women, what is natural for women, like being a mother, and at the expense of family, and in which women as mothers have irreplaceable role. So the other very important document, which is not an encyclical letter, it's an apostolic letter, Mulieris Dignitatium in 1988. So that's the other period. But this document was specifically developed on the dignity and vocation of women by John Paul II. So here we can see some points which I'm glad to share with you. The Church gives thanks to each and every woman, for mothers, sisters, wives, and very special attention for women who work professionally and who at times are burdened by great social responsibility. So, and here we have also a special, very interesting aspect that for perfect women and for weak women. So women can be, let's say, different, and we cannot really uniform every person in a way. So we're different, and Church is thankful for the contribution that female talents and female genius does in all the spheres of life. So the other document, which is very interesting, is Letter of John Paul II to Women, so in which he addressed only women. So there's been some critics on that. So he didn't address men in this message, only women. But this kind of attitude, this understanding, compassion, gratitude, it was like an example of how men should address other women in daily life. And here I would like to just for us to pay our attention to how he says thankful to vocation and mission of women in the world. And he says special thank you to women who work and who are present and acting in every area of life, social, economic, cultural, artistic, and political. So in this way, we can you can make an indispensable contribution to the growth of a culture which unites reason and feeling to a model of life ever open to the sense of mystery. And here he mentions to the establishment of economic and political structures ever more worthy of humanity. So, and John Paul II also says thank you to every woman for a simple fact of being a woman. So, and the last document I would like to pay attention to, so is encyclical Letter Fratelli Tutti of Pope Francis. Here, in this document, he doesn't really address specifically like women, but we can see that attitude to women and attention to women is mentioned in different parts of the encyclical letter in many different ways. But what is very particular here in specifically this verse is that when he speaks about envisaging and engendering an open world and speaks about importance of rights, he talks about virtue of being a woman. So femininity is a virtue, and Catholic social teaching sees femininity as a virtue which should be exercised and which is in the interest of community as a whole. And I would like to thank you for attention at this point, and I would like to pass the word, just a sec, to Valentina Erasmo, who would like to deepen this topic, but in a more practical way. So who would like to share with us characteristic of, let's say, some trait of character, which is very natural to women and beneficial to women? Valentina, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Olena. Good morning or good afternoon at all. It depends where you are. I apologize. I have to turn off my camera because my internet connection is not so good, so it is better to close the camera and have a better connection for my presentation. I kindly ask Olena to share the slide to helping me with this moment. My brief presentation is entitled Care Without Self-Sacrifice, a Proper Balance Between Household and Labor to Improve Female Capital. It is a real honor to join this lesson and having the opportunity to talking after these extraordinary women that make the village of women for economy so living and brilliant. So I'm very, very proud to introduce my topic because we concretely embody the female capital of the EoF community. My brief presentation is ideally divided in two parts. On the one hand, a general analysis of care to better understanding how it is related to female capital, as Anna Laura has already introduced in her excellent introduction. Then I will focus on a more specific and critical analysis of those extreme consequences that are related to care, such as self-sacrifice. About the role of care in female capital, for sure it's a very complex topic, but we all agree that female capital is for sure synonymous of care. And among the most important activities that we can identify in the field of care, for sure there is caregiving. Many caregivers are figures who usually assist children, elders, and or people with disability. And we believe that is not a case that these figures are female. Caregivers might be formal or informal. It depends if they are in a hospital or often are members of a family. But in both cases, it is seminal that in economics we acknowledge the seminal contribution that caregivers provide to our society and in turn to our economic system, especially for activities related to care and social assistance. However, it is quite interesting that the pedagogist Rosemarie Ortner has emphasized how mainstream orthodox economics has not properly considered the role of care in economics. And it is not a case if we consider a macroeconomic measure like the disposable income. It is not a case that disposable income leaves out non-economic elements to estimate our well-being. For instance, activities related to the household goods and services that are so important in the field of care are outside this economic measure. So this is a first step to better consider the role of household activities that arise from care within our economic analysis. But as Economy of Francesco, we are a pluralistic movement and we are trying to building a new economic thinking. So we are trying to go beyond this trend that has not assigned a proper role to care, and on the contrary, we should acknowledge the role of care in our economic analysis, because this is a way to acknowledge the importance of feminine capital in economics. Once that we have acknowledged this issue, we are also able to focus in the second half of this brief presentation, where we will better analyze together what we should avoid within the activity of care, because care is important, can enrich not just the female capital, but can enrich economics, because what will be our economic system without the activity of care that is offered by this important figure? We don't know, but probably a very worse word. So we have to be very, very careful to care. Pardon for this. For this joking. Now I would like to share with you what we have to avoid in the practice of care, such as the activity of self-sacrifice, because in many cases women are also willing to sacrifice themselves in order to offer their cares to the other, and especially to the other members of family. But we have to proceed gradually. How can we define self-sacrifice from a macroeconomic perspective? Well, in general, it is defined as the sense of loss of welfare that is expected or anticipated, and this act is voluntary. In this particular condition, we can have an alternative that probably will make us better off, but it would be a self-interested alternative. So, since this definition of self-sacrifice, in general, self-sacrifice leads to a worsening of individual well-being. In macroeconomic studies, but also in anthropological ones, we have acknowledged that self-sacrifice is an economic motive that we can principally identify within the family group, okay? Because especially women are more oriented to self-sacrifice themselves to improve their family welfare, because their priority is family. But the problem is not to consider the family as a priority, because it's important, and we as women for economy, we firmly believe that family should be at the cornerstone of our life and of the economic life. But it's important to find a proper balance and not worsening individual well-being, in this specific case, women well-being. It is relevant that the economist Amartya Sen has shown during the 90s that self-sacrifice is mostly, but not exclusively, common among women, and in particular those women who live in less developed countries. But why self-sacrifice is more common just in this particular economic and geographical realities? Because in turn, these areas are those areas where gender inequality are more pronounced, and these women feel more obliged to sacrifice themselves for improving the family well-being, although they all live in uncertain condition in these particular economic realities. But this focus on family welfare leads these women to worsen their well-being and to forget even their own identity, because they totally identify with their family. And in context like this, these women do not have equal access to the labor market, and in most cases, their unique economic activities is related to the household. So, in this situation, we can also identify probably an even bigger problem, but I will be very, very brief, and it's a pity because the time is not enough. But some anthropological study has shown how these women also have a perception bias, and they are not able to acknowledge their own deprivation. And this is very, very sad to hear something like this. Concluding this presentation, we can say that care is definitely a distinguishing feature for a female capital, but we have to acknowledge that self-sacrifice might be a threat for female capital. So we have to distinguish what is good and fair for women and for the society, care, from the extremization of the activities of care that leads to self-sacrifice, that is a threat for female capital and for women well-being in turn, because women should have the opportunity to flourish in their life, in their well-being, in every field of human existence, from household to labor, without self-sacrifice then. So a possible solution should be found in a proper balance between the activities of household and labor, also for those women who live in less developed countries. Thank you so much for your attention. I can only conclude that care is possible without self-sacrifice. Thanks. And I leave the word. I leave the floor and give the word to Diletta for
yeah, thank you very much, Valentina. Thank you very much for your
thank you very much.
Very
interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. You did great. Thank you very much also to Ana Laura, Olena, and Lucia for your insights. You all brought different parts of female capital that are all interconnected to the importance of having a female presence and equity in society. We saw that care is a very important trait and cannot be only embedded only in women. We keep associating care with women, and as we heard from Valentina's contribution, care should not lead to self-sacrifice. Instead, society should empower women. Also, as Olena mentioned, to guarantee a female presence, first it has to have access to professional formation. And also the organization should be structured in a way so that women don't have to be punished in the other spheres of their lives to advance in career. We need to remember that the work industry is still thriving with organizations suited to male needs. Of course, because for centuries, mainly men worked. And so these old ways to work don't contemplate women's needs. At first, one of the main solutions to welcome women's needs was flexibility, vertical, horizontal flexibility. However, flexibility is also a way to leave all the householding matters to women. For example, as a mother of 6-year-old boy and a colleague to other women, in my organization, we have flexibility as option. However, flexibility doesn't relieve us from all the burden to all the private duties. It gives us time to do all of them without delegating them. And also we have those cultural unconscious biases that we feel in debt, guilty perhaps, toward the organization for giving us a flexibility. We assume our male colleagues think less of us, think we are not so reliable. Personally, also in my company, I see so much overperformance from my female colleagues to compensate for these unconscious biases. Obviously, it's good for the company, but that can rely on these positive results. But for each of them, each of my female workers, it's a worthless stress coming from these biases. And I meet these feelings of guilt and overburden also in a nonprofit organization I'm a board member in. All the women are always in a rush, pressure to organize and time schedule all the duties like food shopping, taking kids everywhere, taking times off when they are sick, stay at home with them when they are sick. And we are forgetting that time off can also be shared with fathers. So I think as working women, we have to take a step back. We have to stop the Wonder Woman that is in us. I want to go against the flow with this. we've been encouraged to be Wonder Woman. But let me tell you that being Wonder Woman is a trap for us. Some of us has no choice but to be Wonder Woman because there are variables in life you cannot control that lead you to be stronger than ever, more than you ever thought you could have been. But for those women who have access to help, why being Wonder Woman? Why carrying all the duties when they are by law and by nature divisible with others? The hero needs the support of the community, not to be left alone after saving the world with daily tasks. So we talk many times in Women for Economy Village that changing cultural biases is the first and the most important thing to prevent these inequalities. The good news is that recently has been found that fathers in this generation, and I mean Gen Y, are the most present fathers compared to those fathers of previous generations. So that is very encouraging. In fact, what is useful instead of flexibility, as the Nobel Prize Claudia Goldin also stated, is an equilibrium in the family. The couple, men and women, should have couple equality. So the time is running out. So I would like to ask, how can we achieve that? What organization can do to help couple equity and gender equity? I want to ask this first to Anna Laura, who is also the head of marketing department of an important multinational enterprises. And she's also a mom-to-be. So Anna Laura, what do you think it might help the equity, maybe considering what your company is doing?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for asking, and I fully agree with you. It doesn't have to rely only on women. So most of the people would say we need to have government policies. And I do agree, of course, that we would need an endemic structural modification of facilities, policies, or whatever, let's say, is concerning families. Still, I'm a big believer of personal commitment as a game changer, and I fully agree with you, looking at my experience, that Generation Y onwards fathers want to be present and have a central role in families. So where we can surely lobby, if we want to use and turn an economic terminology into positive, is to push our companies and workplaces to widen parental policies, adopting, for instance, some, let's say, what already exists in some companies. So there are a lot of places who are best practicing in this, ensuring not just, for instance, an extension of maternity leaves or public, let's say, state maternity leaves, but also granting fathers for enough time to spend with their families, not just at birth, by the way, because if I think of Italy, it's just 10 days. So that actually cannot really apply into how to help. So Barilla, Heinz, the company I'm working for are just some of those. So I believe that positive change will happen through positive influence among companies. And on the other end, I'm sure people like our age people and even younger people will start applying to companies, not just for their scope, salaries or benefits, but also based on what they are granting us when it comes to this kind of policies. So not just like parental, but caring policies overall, because the same issue can apply to mothers like fathers. So like cross-generational, let's say, issues rather than just kids, of course.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And thank you very much for bringing your insight also, because, you know, as head of marketing department, you are such a good, you have a good leadership position. And so it's very important that a leader in a company carry, you know, this insight. So also the other colleagues can be, you know, inspired by you. So I see that we have only 1 minute left, but I see that we have one question in the chat. So this is a question about health and women and the job opportunity. Agnese was asking that what can we do for the job opportunities for women, because of, you know, sometimes we are pregnant, we have endometriosis, and some of us also have such a strong and painful menstruation. So I think this is a good question for Lucia and her study. What would you suggest, Lucia?
Thank you for the question, and I think it's a very, not an easy one to answer. It's a really complex issue because when, as I said, in sustainable employment, there is this whole area of health and well-being that is taken into account. But it must be said that not all organizations are equal, and not all organizations are so sensitive to, let's say, having the right understanding of the differences in the health of women and men. We are biologically different also when it comes, especially when it comes to health. And it must be said that medical science do not also take into account these differences in, let's say, these differences can be taken into account more thoroughly, let's put it this way, even for the development of drugs and so on and so forth. So from an organization point of view, it's really a matter of cultural shift. And I now reconnect to what you've been saying about new generations, but with aging population, women as the agents of care are asked to exert these efforts even in the long run, because when they finish with the kids, they may start with the parents, as Anna Laura was saying. So this is also affecting their health in a way. So it's not only, let's say, permanent conditions, but it's really a change of attitude and a change of understanding of all the spectrum of let's say, conditions or issues that can impact the health sphere. And it's on one side, it's, let's say, demotivating because it's very complex. On the other side, it must be said that some, for example, certification on gender equality for companies are now being developed. So what we can do as agents of change is in our position to put forward these stances so that the new certification, for example, take these issues into proper account. So we don't want to replicate the window dressing that has been done for, let's say, greenwashing or green attitude, but we really want to make a change, and companies which are awarded this kind of certification must have impactful policies that really take into account the gender differences. So I don't know if this doesn't answer fully the question, I know, but there are some small steps that we are putting forward.
It's not easy to answer, as you said, but you provide a good insight. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So I think we run out of the time, and I don't know if my colleagues have something else to say. Otherwise, I will say that the next EoF class will be on November 27th with Policy for Happiness Village. And I hope you all enjoy our webinar. And we are here for any other questions or chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.